my home. Like, why? I mean, it don't bother. It's bothering y'all more than it's bothering me. This is my home. It doesn't really matter. Oh, who cares? It was their old marital home. It was his home first. He moved her in, and then she left, and then that was it. It was still his home.
Sweet Tea Lunceford has finally stepped out and said what many viewers had been waiting to hear. And the picture she described is a lot different from the polished version people saw on television. For months, fans of Married to Medicine had been trying to understand what was really happening between her and Dr. Gregory, and the more the conversation grew, the more questions seemed to pile up. What started as a public love story turned into a situation surrounded by whispers about control, money, distance, and tension behind the scenes. At the center of it all is a marriage that, from the outside, looked like a fast-moving fresh start. Dr. Gregory had already gone through a very public divorce from Quad Web, and then Sweet Tea entered the picture. Their relationship moved quickly. There were dates, gifts, getaways, and then an engagement. To a lot of people, it looked like a couple racing toward the future. But even as the romance played out in public, some viewers were not convinced everything was as smooth as it appeared. Questions started early, and those questions never really went away. Part of the reason the attention followed them for so long is that Married to Medicine puts every relationship under a microscope. On that kind of show, people are not just watching romance. They are watching behavior, reactions, body language, social dynamics, and every small shift in tone. So when the couple seemed solid on camera, but rumors started building around them off camera, people noticed. The story became bigger than just one marriage. It became a topic of public speculation, with fans trying to piece together what was happening behind the scenes. The first major concerns around the relationship were about control. According to the notes, people around the situation claimed Dr. G liked having things done his way. That included the way Sweet Tea dressed, the way she acted in public, and even how she spoke. The dynamic, as described in the research notes, was not just about personal preference. It was about pressure. Sweet Tea was said to have her own personality and her own way of doing things, and that created conflict because she was not willing to disappear into someone else's idea of who she should be. That is where the relationship started to look less like a fair partnership and more like a power struggle. The notes say Sweet Tea tried to compromise at first, but the tension kept building. She wanted to be herself. He wanted her to fit into his world. That gap between them became one of the biggest reasons things began to strain. Money made the situation even more complicated. Dr. Gregory was described as already established, financially stable, and used to doing things a certain way. Sweet Tea, on the other hand, was still building her own path. That difference mattered. According to the notes, sources claimed Dr. G used money as a way to set expectations. The idea was that if he was providing a certain lifestyle, then Sweet Tea should act a certain way in return. When she did not agree with that, arguments followed. The core issue was not just spending or lifestyle, it was independence. Sweet Tea reportedly did not want to feel like she owed him anything. She wanted to contribute. She wanted control over her own life. She wanted to stand on her own feet inside the marriage, rather than feel financial blessed in. That kind of disagreement can change the tone of a relationship fast, especially when both people see the arrangement very differently. In this case, money became tied to respect, and respect became tied to identity. From there, the tension only deepened. The notes say Sweet Tea felt neglected. She had gone into the marriage expecting love and partnership, but instead she felt like an afterthought. At the same time, Dr. G was allegedly still carrying baggage from his past, and some people began wondering whether he had truly let go of his history with Quad Web. That past relationship stayed close to the center of the conversation, because comparisons between Sweet Tea and Quad apparently kept coming up. According to the notes, Sweet Tea felt like she was being compared to Quad in ways that were not flattering. Dr. G was allegedly bringing up his ex-wife in conversations, whether intentionally or not, and over time that wore Sweet Tea down. That kind of comparison can be painful in any relationship. Instead of feeling chosen for who she was, she reportedly started to feel like a replacement. And once that feeling takes hold, it can be hard to shake. The more private problems leaked into public conversation, the worse the situation looked from the outside. Friends of the couple were said to have shared stories of heated arguments. People in their circle reportedly began hinting that things were not going well at home. Social media picked up on the signs almost immediately. Fans studied everything they could: expressions, energy, silence, and what was not being said on the show. Once that happens, a relationship stops being just a private matter and becomes a public puzzle. But the biggest turning point, according to the notes, came after one explosive night. That night was described as different from the usual fights. It was the moment Sweet Tea allegedly uncovered something that made her stop and reevaluate everything. The notes do not pin down exactly what she found out, and that uncertainty is part of what has kept people talking. There are several possibilities mentioned. Some said it involved another woman. Others thought it had something to do with money. Another line of rumor suggested it had to do with something from Dr. G's past that changed everything for her. What matters is that whatever happened that night, it appears to have been the breaking point. According to the notes, Sweet Tea did not just think about leaving. She packed her bags right away. That detail says a lot about how serious the moment was described to be. This was not a slow fade. This was the point where the marriage reportedly crossed a line she could not move past. After that, Sweet Tea did not stay silent in the way people expected. Instead, she started posting messages on social media that fans quickly connected to the situation. One post encouraged people not to let anyone control their happiness. Another said to believe people the first time they show who they are. Those messages were not explained directly at first, but the timing made people pay attention. The posts became part of the story because they seemed to carry a message without saying everything out loud. Then she finally spoke in a more direct way during an exclusive interview that, based on the notes, changed how many viewers saw the situation. In that conversation, Sweet Tea said she had been upset because there were things happening behind her back that she did not know about. She said she felt hurt and shocked. She also made clear that she was not going to be pushed around. That emotional response gave viewers a better sense of why the public silence ended the way it did. Her bigger point was that the marriage did not feel like the fairy tale people thought it was. According to the notes, she described feeling trapped. She said her opinions and emotions did not matter. She claimed that in private, the relationship was built on control rather than love. That is a very different picture from the polished public image many people saw. Publicly, Dr. Gregory could come across as charming. Privately, Sweet Tea said the power dynamic felt very different. She also alleged that major decisions were made by Dr. G. The notes say she felt resistance anytime she tried to express herself. She spoke about being told how to act, how to dress, and even how to speak in public. That kind of control, if that is how it was experienced, would affect almost every part of a marriage. It changes how someone moves, talks, and shows up around other people. It also makes the idea of being an equal partner feel much further away. One of the strongest ideas in her account was that the marriage had become more about image than love. According to the notes, Sweet Tea suggested that Dr. G wanted a wife who fit into his lifestyle and made him look good in public, rather than someone he genuinely cherished. That detail matters because it shifts the story from simple relationship drama into something much deeper. It suggests that what looked good from the outside may have been very different from what she was experiencing inside the marriage. That theme, image versus reality, runs through the entire situation. A couple can look happy in photos, look polished at events, and still be dealing with serious strain behind closed doors. The notes say that is exactly what people around them believed was happening. They kept up appearances publicly, but privately the cracks were there. The public only saw part of the story, and the private part was where the real tension built. Dr. Gregory's response, at least publicly, was limited. According to the notes, he had not said much, but insiders reportedly said was blindsided by Sweet Tea going public. Some sources suggested he did not expect her to share those details. Others said he may have known she was unhappy but did not think she would take it this far. Either way, the public move changed the stakes. Once one side speaks openly, the story is no longer something people can only guess about. Fans, as you would expect, reacted in very different ways. Some supported Sweet Tea and praised her for standing up for herself. They saw her as someone reclaiming her voice and leaving a toxic situation. Others were more cautious and wondered if there was more to the story. They questioned whether she was telling everything. That split in public reaction is part of what keeps a story like this alive. People are not just reacting to what happened. They are reacting to what they think might still be hidden. There is also the question of what comes next for Dr. Gregory. The notes say people are watching closely to see whether he responds or stays silent. At the moment, his next move remains a major point of interest. In a public relationship like this, silence can feel loud, but speaking can make everything even more complicated. So now the audience is left waiting to see whether he will defend himself, clarify anything, or simply let the conversation move on without him. Sweet Tea, meanwhile, appears to be leaning into independence. Her recent social media posts suggest she is focused on moving forward, but the notes also leave room for the possibility that she is not finished talking. Some insiders believe she still has more to say. That possibility matters because it means this story may not be over. Viewers are not just watching the aftermath of one interview. They are watching for the next detail, the next reaction, and the next shift in the narrative. To understand why this situation has drawn so much attention, it helps to look at the background. Dr. Gregory had already gone through a public divorce from Quad Webb before Sweet Tea entered his life. That history made the new relationship feel especially loaded from the beginning. Fans had already seen one chapter of his personal life play out in public, and now they were watching a second one unfold. That context made it easier for people to read meaning into everything that followed. The quick pace of the relationship also mattered. The notes describe dates, gifts, and getaways leading to engagement in a short time. Fast-moving relationships often create excitement, but they can also hide deeper problems until later. In this case, the speed of the romance raised questions even before the more serious conflict entered the picture. Some viewers wondered whether the excitement was real love or just a whirlwind that had not yet slowed down enough for the cracks to show. The fact that Sweet Tea was newer to the public spotlight also played a role. She was described as young, beautiful, and full of life. That description made the contrast with Quad Webb part of the early conversation, even though that contrast was not necessarily fair. The notes indicate that people saw her as different from Quad, and that difference became part of the public discussion around Dr. Gregory's new chapter. When a new relationship follows a very public breakup, comparisons tend to come fast. What makes the story so compelling is that it contains several layers at once. There is the public romance, there are the private arguments, there is the money issue, there is the alleged control, there is the emotional strain, there is the possibility of another woman or another hidden issue. There is the question of what exactly happened on the night that changed everything. And there is the larger issue of how much of a relationship can really stay private once it becomes part of a reality TV world. The notes also make clear that the public conversation did not stay calm for long. Fans picked apart the couple's appearances, looked for signs of tension, and interpreted every post as possible evidence. Once social media gets involved, even small things can become part of a much bigger story. In this case, Sweet Tea's posts seemed to confirm that something serious had happened, even before she spoke at length. That is why the interview landed so hard. It gave shape to what people had already been suspecting. At the same time, the notes do not give a clean ending. They do not reveal exactly what Sweet Tea found. They do not confirm the rumor about another woman. They do not identify any hidden financial issue. They do not explain the full extent of Dr. Gregory's response. They do not say whether more revelations are coming. That lack of closure is part of what makes the story continue to matter. People are left with a sense that there is still more beneath the surface. What is clear is that Sweet Tea wants the public to understand her side. She said she fought for her marriage, but also that it became unhealthy. She said she had moved on. Those statements suggest both effort and exhaustion. They show a person who tried to hold things together and eventually reached a limit. Whether people agree with her account or not, her decision to speak publicly changed the way the story is being told. And that may be the biggest takeaway here. This is no longer just a private marriage story. It is a public moment where one person chose to explain how the relationship looked from the inside. That shift changes the tone completely. It forces viewers to ask not only what happened, but what they were seeing all along. It also leaves open the possibility that the next chapter will bring even more detail, especially if Dr. Gregory decides to respond. For now, the story sits in that uneasy space between what people saw on screen and what Sweet Tea says was happening behind it. That gap is exactly why people cannot stop talking about it. A fast romance, a public breakup, money tension, control concerns, comparisons to a former spouse, and a sudden decision to go public. All of it creates a story that feels unfinished. And until more is said, that unfinished feeling is what keeps viewers watching. What happens next will depend on whether Dr. Gregory speaks, whether Sweet Tea says more, and whether the public continues to dig for answers. But even without a final resolution, the situation already says a lot about how quickly a relationship can shift from a love story to a public controversy once trust breaks down and private conflict becomes visible to everyone.